On the border of the great Redatome Empire sits the quaint hamlet of Brimcham. Once a thriving naval port for trade and commerce, with the emergence and spread of the enigmatic Dimhaven, Brimcham stands as the last line of defense against the denizens who emerge from the Dimhaven. Ghastly figures and feral beasts alike fall against the surrounding walls of Brimcham, but as such are continually repelled by the brave and stalwart townsguard. Reinforced by the neighboring port of Stonbrook, the station townsguard take pride in their defense of the city, allowing most residents to continue their day-to-day lives with confidence that they are safe under the protection of the Empress Riccio and her rule. Even though the Empress' throne sits on the other side of the empire, far removed from the dangers that present itself from the ever-growing Dimhaven. Our story begins in the basement of the Brimcham jailhouse. It is the story of 3 prisoners held there. Aisling, a halfling bard who, in spite of a naturally positive disposition and a tendency to see the good in everyone, constantly finds herself dancing back and forth over the line of being an upstanding citizen and the more morally gray areas of the law. Being on her own most of her life, there isn't really a place she considers to be home, but until recently, she operated mainly out of the larger city of Hobenrob, in the heart of the Elderlang Dominion. For reasons she refuses to discuss with anyone, she made an abrupt escape from Hobenrob, finding herself in Redatome. Her unique brand of skills allowed her to get by, convincing the naive and foolish to participate in games of chance for gold. Unfortunately, she tried this one too many times and attempted to cheat a powerful aristocrat visiting from Dornsend, who was not impressed. He called for the highest punishment for such an egregious insult to him and his family. Luckily for Aisling, Prime Justice of Brimcham, a young human named Parian Cornwallis, is not so quick to make such swift and unyielding decisions, and instead of execution, opted to lock Aisling in the jailhouse until the situation could be resolved. Next, we have Justice, a tiefling wizard who was already dealt a rough hand by being born in Redatome, specifically the Aldlaw Conclave. Being born of 2 devout parents in the most pious and strict community in the entire empire, and touched by a Lord of the 9 Hells, was generally a death sentence. It was too much for her parents, and they kept her at arm's length for most of her life, such that she spent most of her days reading and studying whenever the opportunity presented itself. Her only strong family tie being the one formed with her sister, Jackie. The strong familial bond with her sister made up for the lack of any kind of connection with anyone else in the city. Justice became quite adept at using her arcane powers and studies to perfect the art of the con. This allowed her to live on her own, but she always kept close to her sister. Until one night, when her sister was supposed to meet up, Justice waited for over an hour before seeking out the cause of the delay. When she arrived at her childhood home, she saw the door busted open, and inside the mangled bodies of her parents laying in a heap of splintered wood from the broken furniture littering the room. A scream from upstairs brought Justice to the 2nd floor in time to see a beastly form drape Jackie over its shoulders. It turned to look at her, showing its pure white iris and long white hair over a sickly greenish-blue face. It grinned and leaped from the window. Justice was about to follow when Townsguard arrived at the home. She managed to escape them, but not without being noticed. Her sister abducted, her parents murdered, and the Townsguard certain she was behind it all. Justice hit the road, and has been looking for her sister ever since, and the creature that took her. Her journey brought her to the Brimcham. Fortunately, she was recognized and jailed, while the townsguard sent an emissary to Aldlaw for further instruction. This brings us to the more unconventional hero of the story. A bugbear named Honey Badger. The smallest of his warband, but no less ruthless than his peers. Honey Badger was particular adept at moving unseen to surprise and ambush potential victims as his band traversed the Dimhaven, preying on adventurers unfortunate enough to find themselves in the decrepit forest. During one such ambush, accompanied by their goblin underlings, Honey Badger and his two comrades ambushed a wagon on its way to Brimcham. The escort of two soldiers was quickly cut down, as was the elderly woman inside. During the pillage, Honey was the first to search the belongings of the woman. Amongst a pile of robes, locked in a chest, he found a round translucent orb. Wasting no time picking up the expensive-looking trinket, a bright glow then filled the wagon. A pressure compressed the sides of Honey's head, and all of a sudden, language, which had always been a bit of a trouble with him, started to make sense. Complex thoughts began to run through his mind, much to the delight of the woman as she lay dying on the floor of the wagon. "You've been awoken," she said before passing away from the injuries inflicted on her by the goblins. The orb fell from Honey's hand, shattering as it hit the floor. He stumbled from the wagon, desperate to make sense of it all. The next raid was closer to Brimcham than his band had ever ventured, which normally wouldn't have been an issue for Honey, but with his newfound insight he recognized how much of a needless risk this was. The band wouldn't listen, and another raid took place. This time the party consisted of what looked like an elderly couple with a young girl. The couple was mercilessly slaughtered, leaving the girl for Honey to deal with. In spite of the insistence of the other bugbears, he refused. It didn't seem right. Apparently, with this newfound world perspective, he also developed a conscience. The band didn't take well to this backstab and attacked Honey, leaving him for dead on the outskirts of the town. Though the little girl was given enough time to escape as the band turned on him. Later that day, his unconscious body was discovered by Brimcham patrols, and he was locked securely in the jailhouse, only spared from execution at the behest of the little girl's father, who took his daughter at her word that this particular bugbear actually saved her life and had nothing to do with the slaughter of her grandparents. The Dimhaven continues to expand further and further in all directions. It now sits on the edge of the Reedatome border, threatening to begin consuming the entire empire. The fates have decreed the destiny of the three, and the mysteries of the Dimhaven remain intertwined. Though even the most powerful seer in the entire empire cannot rightly predict what is about to happen, and what their role in all of this will become, that is a question only time will tell.